Hey, my name is Esther Goldstein, and today we're going to be talking about heartbreak. Now, there's a few different kinds of heartbreak, and I just want to name them all because usually when we think about heartbreak, we think about, these songs on the radio of a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband and wife or one partner with another breaking up with each other. But the concept of heartbreak is so much bigger than that, right? Because we can be heartbroken based on a lot of different things. You can be heartbroken if someone broke up with you or if you had to break up with somebody else. You can also be heartbroken if you're experiencing grief or loss. Maybe you lost a loved one. Maybe your pet is going through some difficulties with their health. Maybe you have a strained relationship with one of your children. And sometimes we can also experience heartbreak in our friendships or with our colleagues. Now, the reason I want to talk about this is because one of the things I'm super passionate about talking about are those unspoken arenas in our lives. There's topics that everyone talks about, or I guess like the world is comfortable talking about. So when it comes to, externalized or normal or common, and I don't like using those terms, but like more typical losses or pains, that's kind of spoken about, right? If you're walking around on crutches, people know like you hurt your leg, right? If you are dealing with a loss, if like you lost your pet, then people understand like, wow, there's a loss that you're experiencing. It gets a little tricky when you're experiencing a loss or when you're experiencing a pain in your heart, and the heart's a muscle, and so it really feels strong and it really feels pain, and we feel lots of feelings, but it's not obvious a lot of times, right? So I personally I know I'm an anxiety and trauma specialist, and one of my specialty areas, I would say, is kind of like naming the implicit, naming the things that people are feeling, naming or acknowledging or making space for, or maybe like intuiting and kind of picking up on the unspoken pains or suffering or stressors that people are feeling, because when we identify it, then we can start tending to the feelings and start healing it. So, right now, when we're talking about heartache, I kind of want to talk about the arenas of where we experience heartache and some things that we can do, or you can do if you right now in this moment are experiencing that pain or that sadness or that emptiness or that anger or worry around heartbreak. So I'm just going to name some areas of heartbreak. So heartbreak can be that you are heartbroken because you confess love to the love of your life and they don't feel the same way. Heartbreak can be that you invited your child for Thanksgiving dinner and they turned it down. Heartbreak can be that you went to a social event and you wanted to sit at a table and the people at the table gave you a cold feeling and you knew you're not welcome there. Heartbreak can be that a mentor, someone that you looked up to, is struggling and you went to meet them and they are no longer the ideal person that you looked up to, and you're really struggling with like, well, who are they? And is what I, emulated or copied or looked up to really the same, or have they changed? So there's that heartbreak. Heartbreak can be sharing a trauma or a pain that you've gone through with someone in your family or a friend and the person denying it or challenging you, right? Heartbreak can be finding out that you cannot have children or that you lost your job. Heartbreak can be learning about a health condition. Heartbreak can be learning the truth about your family or learning the truth about someone you love and needing to digest that. So heartbreak is so much more than what we think about, right, in the movies or on these love songs on the radio. Because heartbreak is essentially that there's some kind of form of betrayal, some kind of form of like a crushing sensation of, I opened my heart, I loved in a way that love feels to me, and now I'm feeling incredibly like hurt, rejected, confused, or just kind of like broken inside in some way. So if you are feeling heartbroken, then I just want to say that it is one of the things that all of us humans go through. If so many times people say, like, I've given speeches or presentations, and I sometimes will have like somebody come over to me or a few people come over to me and say, like, can you just give me like 5 tips about how to avoid heartbreak? Or can you just give me like 7 tips on how to choose like the perfect person to date? Or can you just tell me like the foolproof way to parent? Or can you teach me the best way to find like a way to build a meaningful life? And I almost want to like bend down and like kiss that person's like sweetness, right? Like the words that they're saying are so sweet because there's like a naivety to it. And it's like, of course, I wish I can give you like this, simple folded or like this golden coin that's going to help protect you. At the end of the day, the best thing that we can possibly do, this is what I usually say, is to kind of gear you up with tools and with wisdom and with the knowledge and self-awareness so that should you find yourself in a situation, you can best navigate. Now, obviously, the more aware we are, the more the healthier situations and relationships we're going to be in, that we can choose when we have choices. And sometimes we find ourselves in situations or with people or realities, and then the best thing we can do is to navigate that to the best of our ability. Okay, so when it comes to heartbreak, right? Usually, you don't choose to be heartbroken, right? It could be that you fell in love with someone. It could be that you have a strained relationship, or someone in your family has become abusive or neglectful or is not emotionally well, or struggling with something. It could be that your friend group, maybe you have or had a really close friend, a best friend, or a social network, and you guys have drifted apart. Right? Maybe you've wanted to, work on a relationship and someone has shut you down, or maybe you've reached out to someone and they keep rejecting you, right? Or maybe there's something entirely else. Now, what I want to first just say is number one, just notice the pain. Notice the pain, because so many times when we are feeling heartache or pains, we kind of run away from the pain. And I think the best thing that we can do, although it really doesn't feel good, is be like, my heart is really hurting, right? This heart inside of me, this heart that helps me like pump love and energy and life force and connects me to my wisdom and reverberates joy and love. It also feels when there's sadness. Okay, so number one, just like identify and feel the pain that your heart is feeling. Number two, I would say, is to process. Now, we have to identify pain, and then we also have to process pain. Now, processing pain is not a simple step of like, I'm going to talk to one of my close friends, or I'm going to talk to a loved one or a therapist or a mentor, and it's going to be resolved. When it comes to heartache, processing is that processing can take on many different forms. I know for my own self, and people might know this already about me, like part of my processing is I need to sit with my feelings. I have to, I feel it in my body. If when my heart hurts, I literally will feel like pangs of pain. I'll feel like sadness coming up or whatever, or like this emptiness coming up. I just want to stay with my sensation. But processing could take on, right? For myself, it's a lot of it's like poetry or artwork. But for some people, and I want to just say about the processing piece is that processing when it comes to heartache is not like a three package deal, right? It's not like here's 12 sessions and then you're good, right? Which some people within 12 weeks can be fine thinking therapeutically, but it usually is like it takes time. And I know for my own self, when it comes to heartache, there have been times where my heart's been hurt and I'm like, okay, let me just try to like, what's the strategy, right? My brainy part, my intellectual part is like, okay, how do I, how do I heal a heart? And if I didn't know better, I'd probably be Googling it. And some emotions we can't like skip. We can't like outrun our emotional experience. And the thing that I've seen in my own life and professionally working with, thousands of clients, is that heartache, like when people are going through a heartache, I usually say, can you give yourself a grace of a certain period of time for it to really ache, right? It's going to really ache. So like at least for the first week or two, the ache is going to be really strong. Okay. And then like week 3, 4, the ache is going to be a little less. And week, 5, 6, the ache's probably going to soften a little bit and there's going to be waves of when it's more achy and less achy. So, the goal is for the ache to ache a little less. The ache's not going to go away. Over a long periods of time, the ache can go away, right? It's going to lessen and then over time it will go away. And then there might be triggers or there might be emotions that come up. But heartache healing really like kind of happens in waves. Okay, so I think there's like giving yourself grace or the space, and it depends on like what the love was like and what the relationship was like and how it ended, or the pain that's left there, and if repair might be possible some point in the future. But I think there's like the naming the pain and then allowing yourself to process. Now, in that time frame, right, knowing that you're going to be aching for some time, part of processing is engaging in activities, thoughts, feelings, or just spending time with people or with yourself with actions and behaviors that are tending towards allowing the pain to be there and are also allowing the ache to be a little less. What does that mean? I'll just speak therapeutically for a minute. So if I'm aching right now, the best thing that I could probably do is, number one, stick to a really consistent schedule, because when we're in pain, the last thing we want to do sometimes is to tend to ourselves, right? We can want to engage in like self-sabotage behavior or just kind of feel yucky about ourselves, or self-sabotage like going to sleep really late and not taking care of our bodies. And you're already feeling so much pain that the best thing you could possibly do is keep a structure or a framework of like going to sleep on time, eating healthy foods, sticking to your routine, even though you're aching. You can do both. You could be present and aching at the same time. Okay, it really hurts and it's really uncomfortable, but you can. I think the other piece is that when we take good care of ourselves and we stick to structure, then we can actually process better, right? If you're drinking like a bottle of alcohol a night, or if you're engaging in like self destructive or disconnected sex, or if you're binge watching till 5 o'clock in the morning, then you're not actually allowing the processing to happen, right? You identified the pain, and here's the processing. Processing doesn't feel good. Processing means the emotions and the sensations are coming up and out of you. Okay. So if you're numbing, what you're doing is you're creating an extra layer of something that you're going to need to process, and you're pushing off the processing another few months. So I get why people do it. Just so many times when I meet people in this space, I'm like, look, there's horrible and then there's extra horrible. Can we be in horrible? So we're going to get horrible to like less horrible, right? Because if you're in a horrible place, fine. But if you're drinking or self destructing, you're going to make it extra horrible. And then the better place we're going to get to is going to be horrible. So we're pushing ourselves a step behind. So that's number one. Processing. So that's kind of like not engaging in that negative behavior or lessen it. Even if you do, then I would just say, like, okay, what do I really want? Processing would be like reaching out to people who love and support you, or people, and it might be your therapist, to just be like, I need to talk about this experience. So like giving it like words, a narrative. What happened? What was it like for you? What's going on for you? How are you feeling? Because part of processing is just giving airtime, giving space to what happened, what's going on for you, what's the lessons that you're learning. Maybe you're learning that there's things for you to work on, right? Heartache isn't always that it's about one person or another person that did something wrong. There might be life lessons for you, right? Are there things for you to learn? There might be lessons about boundaries, right? Were there things that you allowed, or were there signs that you saw and you kind of just pushed away? And how is that a lesson for you, right? So processing is like making sense of the story. And as you start making sense of the story, you are going to start getting wisdom, and it is still going to hurt, right? Like processing and making sense of it doesn't take away the ache. Part of processing could be, right, like drawing, meditating. Sometimes what happens with heartache, and I've seen this as a trauma and anxiety therapist and someone who works with people who've gone through like relationship trauma or a lot of neglect, is that sometimes a relationship where there's heartache, right, when a relationship ends, the person is healing the relationship. So, right, let's say I had a disagreement or a falling out with like my colleague, right, or a partner at work, right? So say we're working on a project together, and then we just have a miscommunication, and either like we don't have a good relationship, or there's a lack of trust from one side, and we maybe one of the people aren't healthy enough to engage in a healthy kind of like repair, which is sad. But let's say we just can't, right? Or let's say we just slowly drift away without hard feelings, but there's that loss and there's that heartache. I'm just giving that example. Then essentially, as I do the healing, I might need to process about what happened and about our disagreement, blah, blah, blah. But essentially, if I'm wise, or if I have the capacity to be introspective, or if my brain and body are willing and ready, I probably will also open up like another capacity to heal myself. So maybe there's like a healing about relationships. Maybe there's someone in my life who's similar to this person. Let's say this person didn't have a capacity to be introspective. So I might, be processing about like, oh, like Sally did this and Sally did that. And if I'm with a good therapist or with a good friend, they might say, Sally sounds awfully similar to your best friend from childhood who always like needed to control things, and you always felt so shut down. And, what was it like? Like, does that land, right? And so the lesson in there for me would be like, wow, it's so interesting that I unconsciously felt safe doing a project with someone who essentially repeated a pattern where it wasn't going to work, right? Like I need to, right? And then the work would be like noticing where I have a voice, or when I'm assessing people to work with and being like, I have a lot of opinions, and it really needs to make sense for us both to have opinions together. And how would we navigate crisis? Or how would we navigate, let's say, on the project? Or how would we navigate conflict? Let's just check that we're both like really in sync on those values, right? So I'm just saying this because part of like the little golden aspect of pain is that there's almost always a learning curve, and often sometimes even a deeper layer of healing that's possible beyond the relationship that's at play. Okay, and doing the processing work, I just need to say, also allows, like, it's funny because people say like, I don't want to process, and I almost always say like, it freaking sucks and it's so painful. And at the same time, if you process, you're shifting your relational template, which means like the next relationship or the next work project or the next friend that you're going to have, or the next, even a current relationship that you have, or a love relationship or with your partner, when you have an interaction, as you do the healing internally, you're going to be more evolved in this relationship. So say you have this falling out, or say that someone just broke up with you, and you're learning something about yourself, the next time you're talking to your sister, right, or you're talking to like somebody else, a close friend, you might notice that you're actually more honest and more transparent because that's what you're learning that you need to do. Or you might set boundaries so that you're not holding resentment. So I just kind of want to name that, heartaches are opportunities for us to learn and to grow. But I was just saying, so number one, feel the pain, right? Acknowledge it, be with your pain. Number two, process. I think number three is allow yourself to grieve. Now, grieving is part of processing, but the reason I'm identifying it as separate is because when we love, there's hopes and there's dreams and there's wishes. And hopes and dreams and wishes could mean like, oh my goodness, I was just going to go with John to Florida for my winter break and I was so excited. Or I was looking forward to introducing Sandra to my parents for Thanksgiving and finally not being single. Or, I was so excited, or I was really looking forward to meeting up with my son who's in college and really bonding over, the work that we've both been doing in our family. And I'm so sad. And so you're not just like being sad about the loss, or right, if somebody's pulling back, or if you're the one who has to pull back, right? Say someone's become emotionally abusive. Say you're the one who's pulling back, right? Like, you've been spending time with a really, really good friend, let's just say Jack, and you're noticing that Jack's becoming controlling, and you're pulling back, right? And you're saying, Jack, we can't hang out. So there's the pain there, right? And Jack says like, you were anyway like an idiot. I don't like being your friend, right? So there's like heartache and pain right there. The grief is like grieving the times that you would have had together, or grieving the times that you were planning together, even though you know that this is not a good connection, right? So there's just like, I think sometimes like there's ambiguous losses. Like people think like, oh, that wasn't good for you anyway, right? Like sometimes we call people and we say like, oh, I'm so sad about this, and they're like, but he wasn't good for you anyway, or she wasn't a good friend anyway. And it's like, okay, and I'm still feeling sad, and I'm still grieving, right? There's still that void inside. So I just want to name that. So there's right, getting in touch with the pain, naming it, processing. There's grieving, and the fourth one that I'm going to say, and if you're not here, just don't land on it, is permission to open your heart again. What happens is that when we go through any kind of pain, and it could be like a big pain, it could be a small pain, it could be a big heartache or a small heartache in any arena. Is that at some point, like our heart becomes kind of like guarded. And the guardedness could be like acting like a porcupine, where you're acting snippy with people, or you're pushing people away, or you're energetically just not open, or you're not even being loving to yourself, right? You're not like doing the nourishing things that you do for yourself. Like I know for myself, when I'm nourishing myself, I'm preparing really yummy meals, or I'm going to my yoga classes, or I'm engaging in prayer and meditation, or, being really honest with my boundaries when I'm out with friends, saying, I actually have to leave in like 20 minutes. How is that, So I think the opening your heart again is about opening your heart to yourself and really opening your heart to people. Because this thing called life is one that, even though I don't like it, it's a series of like traumas and triumphs, I would say, right? It's a series of like life is a mix of kind of like pains and pleasures, right? So I don't mean traumas in the word trauma, but there's disappointments, right? And then there's also exciting things. And I think one of the things that makes us who we are is the losses, and then also like the subsequent like reopening ourselves up, right? Like the re-blossoming of a flower after it felt like it's been withering for some time. So the fourth step I would say is giving yourself permission to open up your heart, and it could be in really small snippets. I know for myself and some of my experiences, reopening my heart after like a heartache, and it could be something small, or I know for my own self, sometimes significant. It could be a terrifying experience. It's almost like going on a roller coaster after you promise yourself you're not going on roller coasters and you're just going to be the one watching. So there could be this terror, but there also could be this huge sense of relief and joy of like, wow, it's so good and it's so important for my heart and mind to relearn or to get acquainted with the fact that there's so many different kinds of people in this world, and I'm so excited to have met this person, right? Or this kind of friend. I know for myself, I've moved countries different times, and so I've had like a really strong social network, and then I'm just giving one example, and then I had to like redevelop or reconnect with the social network I had from a while before, and then I had to navigate that, and I remember like resisting it for some time, and then it was like, no, I'm going to be open to that, right? So I know for my own self and some of my more intimate relationships, there's been a lot of protectiveness, and then also like this openness, and it always comes with some excitement, I just have to say. So if you're in this world called life, and if you're one of those people like me, or people who I know who are just like honest to God lovers and passionate and caring and connected people, part of what happens when we love deeply, and even if you're not someone who thinks that who other people think loves deeply, but if you're a sensitive soul and you really love people or you really just connect, then chances are you might have had or you might have an experience where you're disappointed or you feel heartache. And I just want to say you're allowed to feel heartache even if no one else thinks that it's heartache. If your hamster is dying, right? Or if you have to move communities and your heart is really hurting because you're not going to see like your favorite ice cream store person, right? Whatever it might be for you, like the significance about the connection is incredibly personal, right? And obviously there is like different kinds of heartache that we spoke about, but wherever the heartache is, I want to just name it. I think just like owning it. I know for my own self, I've met people who are really honest about like, yeah, my heart's been through like the ringer and here I am, and I just have so much respect for people who have that like boldness and that level of honesty of like, this is where I've been and this is who I am and it's made me into who I am. And yeah, I remember speaking to someone who's like, yeah, I have some tattoos, I have some scars, and it's formed me into who I am. So I think that if we're honest, or when we're honest about the ways that our hearts are soft and loving and joyous, and we're also honest about this experience of life where our hearts could sometimes have gone through or go through things. And so my wish and my hope for you is that if you're going through anything related to feeling some kind of pangs in the heart, that you offer yourself the grace and the compassion to engage in these few steps that I spoke about, and whatever pace it feels right for you. So number one, identify the pain, right? My heart hurts. Number two, processing and different ways to process and not adding self-sabotage, because then you're going to have to process an extra layer. The third thing is grieving, permission to grieve. And the fourth thing is allowing yourself to reopen your heart in the right way or form that feels right for you. Just know that I'm sending a whole lot of care from my heart to your heart wherever you are. And I invite you to stay connected to this channel. On our website, we're always creating free content that can help you as you engage in healing and in growth. So just check out the link below, and I look forward to continuing to learning with you.